Hey everyone, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today we are actually standing out here by the Kubota M6060 because I have a little modification that I want to do to it, but I kind of got disappointed. I was out here kind of pre-fitting and pre-checking things and seeing what I was going to need to work on this with. So let me show you what's going on. So I got one of these chainsaw scabbards for the Kubota M6060 from Vevor, and this scabbard, like on their website, it looks like that they have it mounted to an M6060. It looks identical to my tractor. They do have measurements on there of their brackets and all that kind of stuff, so you can check all this stuff. And this is partly my fault though. I measured my loader arm right here because this is where I'd planned on putting it. It's really about the only place that I can see that it might actually go on. So I measured that, and the U-bolt and everything there measured wide enough to be able to fit on here. So I thought, you know what, I think I'm going to try it. I think it's going to work. So as you can see, it does fit on the loader arm, but look at the length of it. It is not hardly long enough. I mean, it looks like it is right now, but let me show you something else. So this is the back of the mount, and it's got these round head bolts on it, and this is the side that goes against your tractor. So those bolts are holding this mount away from the surface by quite a bit, and you cannot put the nuts on there with those bolts in it. So I'm going to have to modify this a little bit in order to get this thing to work. And what these bolts are doing is holding this back plate on here in order to mount it to the tractor. So another thing, if you were mounting this and you're trying to pull this up tight, you're going to have these round bolts that this mount is going to be rocking back and forth on. This makes no sense whatsoever. So a person could put something on there, and originally I was going to put a piece of wood on this back side and drill out some holes for these heads to go in, but the bolts aren't long enough to do that. I'm going to actually just take these bolts out and weld this back plate onto the mount itself. That way the whole back of this thing is completely flat, and I shouldn't have any issues then, and the bolts, or the U-bolt here, will be long enough. But the only other problem that I have with this is this bracket is super small. Like, it's not very big at all. I was expecting it to be a little more heavy duty than this. So let's head down to the house. I'm going to weld this thing up solid. That way I've got a good flat back on it, and then I'm going to mount it up to the tractor and just try it and see how it does. I think that'll solve my problems, and I think it'll work okay. But I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't just bolt this thing on and it just fit, and then I'm going to have to modify it. Now, on a different tractor, then yes, this probably would work a different way. This tractor is an M6060 utility tractor, so smaller series, smaller loaders and all that, this probably would fit. So kind of just keep that in mind and maybe look at those measurements a little closer than what I did. So the first thing I want to do here is take off the paint with the flap disc. And I'm just going to barely scuff this down to the metal. I don't want to remove any metal. So I'm just going to get the paint off of it so that the weld will stick good. So I sanded all the paint off of the matching surfaces, and where I'm going to run a little bead around the edges of this, that should give us good contact there to be able to weld this together. Like I was saying, that's going to eliminate those bolts back here on the back sticking out, so it should give us a good flat surface to mount to the tractor. So I'm not going to attempt to give you any welding tips because I don't know anything about welding. All I know is I bought a welder and I've welded a few things and they seem to hold together, so that's what I'm going to do here. My welds are not pretty, and like I say, I don't know anything about it. So I can tell you now, I have a lot to learn about welding. Don't make fun of my welds because, you know, I've only welded a few things in my life, so I'm learning as I go. And these little projects like this, it doesn't matter whether it's pretty or not, but this is going to hold. I got a little bit of run over on the back, so I'm going to grab my grinder and I'm going to cut these little humps off right here on the edge, but other than that, this should work. And of course, I'm going to spray black paint back on here and cover all this up. So these little nuts on here are only a 10 millimeter. So they're not very big at all. So the mount seems to be pretty secure right there. They come with 2 nuts so that you can put like a lock nut on here basically. But I think I'm going to put thread locker on there just to make sure that I don't have any problem with those backing off. So now that we got it bolted on there, the scabbard on this thing is actually made out of metal. And it's a fairly thick metal. It's probably a 1/16 thick just like the rest of the material, but you know, it being in this entire sheath like this, it actually feels pretty solid and pretty sturdy. I don't know if this is a good thing or bad, but I know that, you know, you probably have to watch it a little bit when you're putting your chainsaw in because you're going to be hitting your teeth on this metal all the time. That may or may not be a good thing, but I'm going to drop this down in here. I'm going to go ahead and snug up these bolts right here on the sides. So all that does is kind of snugs up this scabbard. You're supposed to loosen those just a little bit to be able to slide that down in there. You can still slide it out. It's just really tight. But, you know, that kind of just helps hold it down in there. So one thing that I do notice, I'm worried that this thing's going to be banging around a little bit. That's not a big deal to me because, you know, there's actually a bracket right here behind this that I'll probably just take a black zip tie or something and put around this and pull that back tight against that so it's not bouncing around. So let's get a chainsaw and see how it fits in here. I gotta say, I'm actually pretty surprised. Yeah, it does have that movement that I was worried about down here. But like I say, I think if I put my zip tie around it, I won't have any problem with that. But I was worried about how the bucking spikes would actually work in this as it comes down. And it actually kind of locks into this housing right here. You can see how the bucking spikes is like one set of them is inside the sheath and one set is on the outside. And that actually locks that in and makes that thing pretty solid. And there's clearance right here between my pin on my tractor, so I don't have to worry about that. I like that pretty good. So only time will tell of how well I continue to like this. I have been wanting a way to carry my chainsaw on my tractor for a long time. And I'll tell you why I ended up going with this Vevor. I did buy this, which is why that, I mean, I don't care to say anything negative about it because I bought this with my own money and, you know, this is my thing. It was a little bit of a hassle putting it on this tractor. If you have a different tractor with a smaller loader, this may not be an issue whatsoever. But something that will are those round bolts that was on the back side of this bracket. You can't mount them flat on something and get this thing sturdy with those bolts on the back side. You'd have to put something there, either some sort of a pad for those bolts to sink into, or maybe a thin piece of wood with the holes drilled out so those bolts would set back in that wood. But the reason I went with this is because it was $89, and I kind of just wanted to see for myself, you know, whether it was decent for $89 or whether it was, you know, I should have went ahead and got like a saw haul or something, because the saw haul is $149 now. And I'm sure that they're built a lot better, but it's also $149 versus $89. You know, it's kind of cool having this nice metal scabbard on here. I think that'll be a very long-lasting thing. Like, I don't think you'd never wear through it or wear it out with your chain on your saw, but you do have to watch it when you're putting it in as far as like scraping it on it and all that. But I really don't think that that's going to pose much of an issue. I think the bracket itself will probably hold up over time just fine. There's so many times that I run into the need to have my chainsaw. So now I can just put it here on my tractor. Whether I need it or not, I can carry it with me. But if you do feel like you'd want to pick one up, I will leave a link in the description below. I wouldn't mind having a saw haul brand to actually compare these two. So I don't know, maybe in the future something like that can work out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, I appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button. And until next time, keep it outdoors.